Hello. I hope you enjoyed that reading of the 23rd Psalm. It is a favorite psalm for so many people. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. It's a favorite because it's a beautiful psalm, evoking images of green pastures and still waters, pictures that we are drawn to when life feels chaotic and choppy. Psalm 23 is a psalm of comfort often read at funerals and memorial services, giving us an image of God who cares for us even in our deepest troubles. We often read this psalm to provide us with comfort, but I believe Psalm 23 also offers us some challenges. Think about this line in the psalm where it says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." Now, if you go and read other psalms, you read different things about enemies. Like in Psalm 3, we hear the psalm writer asking God to strike our enemies in the feet or to break the teeth of the wicked. It's pretty violent. But in Psalm 23, it's quite different because God is preparing a table in the presence of our enemies. We could read this as a call to nonviolence, an invitation to find a way to be in table fellowship with our enemies, to find ways to seek reconciliation. That's quite a challenge. And after God prepares a table in the presence of our enemies, God anoints our heads with oil and our cup overflows. What beautiful words of God's abundance. If God's love is so abundant, is that abundance only for ourselves, or is it meant to be shared with others? This psalm is a balancing act between offering us comfort and challenging us to live in new ways. It seems lately the leaders of the world's nations are seeking to find a balance between offering us words of comfort and challenging us to find ways to lower the risk of the coronavirus. Lately, much of the conversation in our nation has been about finding a balance between our physical health and our economic health. We are struggling, but some are struggling more than others, and this virus has uncovered in glaring ways the racial and economic disparities that already exist in our nation. African American communities are suffering a more significant loss of life due to the coronavirus. And the contrast between the rich and the poor have become even more exacerbated as this pandemic continues. And we are experiencing tensions between our individual liberties and the common good. People are testing the boundaries between the rights of individuals and the rights of society at large. Yesterday, as I was listening on my telephone to a town hall sponsored by our governor, a woman asked a question about when we could begin opening phase 2 of our state's economy. I could hear the angst in her voice and her deep desire to get the economy going again so that people wouldn't be suffering economically. I think she really wanted to go back to work. And I know that the requirement of closing our economy has had huge implications on people's lives and on their livelihood. But the governor gently reminded her that we were only on day 2 of entering phase 1 of reopening the state. And for the sake of the most vulnerable people in our state, we needed to have some patience as we moved forward. We are living in times where we need both words of comfort and words of challenge. In the United States, we tend to think a lot about individual freedoms. We struggle more deeply with our sense of the collective. But our biblical stories give us a different lens to view what it means to be free. Our biblical stories answer the question, who matters in God's economy? The earliest expression of the church gives us a glimpse into a model of God's economy. In the book of Acts, it says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and prayers, and all who believed were together and held all things in common. And they would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having goodwill of all the people. The early church cared for each other deeply by making sure that all had what they needed. Now, some scholars claim that this was a very idealized description of the earliest church, and that things may not have happened exactly this way. But does that really matter? Isn't it just as important that these words were describing a hope, a vision of a church, a community of caring people, caring for each other's needs? And can this be a vision for our church even today? And not just for the church, but also for society in general? Reverend Cameron Trimble, the executive director of the Convergence Project, has been doing some research into community, resilience, and pandemics. She wrote in an email this week about how societies are transformed due to a pandemic. She wrote, the key to cultural transformation was a community's ability to hold together with deep empathy and compassion for one another. Those communities who fractured in conflict experienced long-term devastation. The key to transformation was deep empathy and compassion for one another. You know, we're not able to go out into the world together at this time. I'm really missing that. But this is an opportunity for us to go together deeper inwardly into our hearts and souls. This is a time when we can enlarge our souls, especially in the area of empathy and compassion. I think the 23rd Psalm and our reading from the book of Acts gives us grounding in developing those qualities of empathy and compassion. And I hope they provide you with both words of comfort and words of challenge. Amen and amen.